Greetings, everyone, and welcome to East Meets West at the VISE. Today, the 13th of March, Eric Austin is going to do a fly I've never even heard of until today called the McSneek. And I'll be working on a variation of a Notzinger fly from the early 80s. I'm Al Beatty, and let me get my good friend Eric Austin in here beside me here. And Eric, you about ready
Hello.
to tell us all about this new fly that you're gonna take care of?
Well, it's not exactly a new fly, but yeah, I'll tell you all about it.
It's new. Let me rephrase. It's new to me, so you you could go for it, my friend.
Honestly, I didn't think I could do a fly older than the quack, which I did last week. But this style of fly is certainly older. Um, and it's the old fan wings. And we had a request from one of the viewers. I'm not sure if he's out there now, but um, to do an old style fan wing fly. And I fished these in the 60s with not a whole lot of success, I've got to admit. Um, they did not work well for the brown trout on the Saranac. They were originally designed, I believe, as brook trout flies, very much attractors, and they've got big fan wings. And I'll show you some I've tied in the past, this kind of distant past. Um, this is what some of these are from Great Britain. This is a Green May female, and this of course is uh, the Cahill. We'd call it a dark Cahill, but in Great Britain it's just known as the Cahill. This is a oh, my mind's gonna fail me. I'll come back to it in just a second. And of course, we all know this Royal Coachman, and this is the fly I fished in the 60s and didn't do particularly well with. And they were store-bought flies, but I'm very confident that if I had tied them myself, my things would not have improved. Um, it's not a brown trout fly. These fan wings, not for brown trout. This is one called Sunset, pretty fly, and this is called Europa, obviously a European in origin. This is the one I'm going to tie today. This is a little more reasonable. This is from Ray Bergman's book Trout, and which was written in the 30s. And this is called the McSneek, and this is a top view. And I have somewhere. Ah, I wanted to show you this old. This is from an old catalog, an Ogden Smith catalog in London, uh, proving that we didn't invent the fan wing. They call these mermaid flies for whatever reason, and most of the wings um, were done with mallard breast feathers. However, if you look at the yucca, that was done with teal. And some of these others are a question in my mind. You can use just about any breast feathers on these flies. And the one I'm going to do today uses wood duck breast feathers, not flank feathers, but breast feathers from a wood duck. And that's the best way to do the white winged ones, which were the most popular in the US. And let me get started on this. I'm using Benecki 12-aught on this 12-aught thread. I want to go to about the 30% mark on the hook. A, a little forward of 1/3, may even go one more. Uh, just to make room for all the stuff that goes behind. And I have got a couple of wood duck feathers that I've prepared, wood duck breast feathers. They're pure white. And I've made the width of these. This is just an arbitrary thing on my part. I've made the width of these about shank length on each. In other words, I've stripped off enough off the sides that these are tough to handle. Each one is about at the tips is about the width of the shank. Now I'm going to put these together back to back so that their stems flare out. And I'll show you so I get it like so. And this has a very interesting wing mounting technique that went by the boards. It's just not used anymore. People used to mount duck wings with this technique, even though duck wings don't have a stem like this. They use the same idea. And you start by straddling the hook with both stems, taking 2 or 3 turns around. And then this is the tricky part. You while you bring these back behind the wings, like so, pull the wings forward out of the way. Oops, I lost one. Tie them off underneath the hook. Now there's a little more to this. George Harvey, in his small little book, does something I've never seen anybody else do, but it really makes the pattern work. I'm going to redo these. I've got a little more stem here than I'd like. Well, we can try it and see how this pans out. What George Harvey does is he takes turns around. Oops, sorry. He takes turns around the butts, right around these stems at the bottom. And he talks about taking a half dozen turns, which is a lot. And what this will do, if these feathers are out of whack, and these are just a little bit, as you can see, these are canted this direction. So what he suggests is taking a turn underneath the hook, going the opposite direction then to adjust these to get them the other way. And I think we're almost there. Interesting technique. And then you just reverse the thread back. So we've got these more or less straight up and down. We'll go with this. Not perfect, but perfect for live. And at this point, we're going to mount a tail, hackle. And like all flies of this era, it's got a fairly long tail, hook length or so. And I just rolled that up on there. I'm going to try to smooth out the body as best I can. It's not that important on this fly, to be honest. Hold the tail up, take it back, take the thread back. And at this point, we're going to put, I would normally call this a butt, uh, a tag. Um, you can call it a lot of things, and it has been called a lot of things of, sorry, peacock herl here. And it's supposed to be black peacock herl. I've used, I don't have any dyed black peacock herl, so I've used a small strand of ostrich herl. And there, I hope you can see this. There is a stem here. It's actually on the bottom of the feather. And I want that as I wind this, I want that to lead. That gives me a dense body or a dense tag in this case. And this is just like winding a hackle. Oh, 4 turns.
I'm in a Zoom.
And we'll bind it down with 4 or 5 turns. Cut it, flatten the thread. I'm going to build this up a little bit back here because um, I that one I showed you uh, when I was showing all the pictures I did yesterday, and I noticed that it was wider back here than up here, so I got to try to fill in the front. What I've got now is a piece of medium tinsel. It's going to make the bulk of the body, and I've cut it to a point. I'm going to tie it in on the far side of the hook. And I do that to get a clean start with the turns when I wind it. And then I bind this down on the bottom. Bind that point down on the bottom. I'm going to try to get 5 turns of this. That's arbitrary. Now, my technique, this is always problematical. This is metal tinsel. Um, Mylar is a piece of cake. A metal can actually cut your thread, so I'll spin the thread up, and then I'll here's what I do. I'll take a turn on one side of it, a turn on the other, repeat that, then cut it flush. You're never supposed to do this with these scissors. Just do as I say, don't do as I do. and bind that flat part down. All right. Let's see, I guess I can get one more turn back here. We need another one of these tags up here. Let's see. I've still got some hurl here. Might take a turn in front or two so it doesn't pull out. So I want that. I need the stem to lead. I was afraid of this. I've gotten it tied in incorrectly. Usually you can bend it around and make it work, but oh, there it goes. All right. This front one is can be a problem. All right, all we need is a hackle. And there you have the McSneek. Here it is from the top.
Well, Eric, that's beautiful. What I'm going to be doing sure isn't going to look anything near that nice. Any questions out there?
That's a beautiful tie.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Eric, if you had
I'm
your rathers, how much of that stem would you have exposed on the family?
none.
Okay.
Um, actually, I really like the George Harvey thing where he wraps it around the base. So maybe a little bit, but less than I had with this one for sure. Um, like here's this one. Let me look at the one I did the other day. Well, it's they're similar. They're similar. Um, yeah. I mean, this is fine. This is how they looked. Uh, so you can get away with a little bit of exposed, that's for sure. But I wouldn't do too much. I would have liked to have had it a little less than that. But and I would have. The other thing I really like very curved breast feathers. They're harder to work with, but in this case, I didn't have that. Um, the ones I had were a little had less curve. You can really get um, a nice result with mallard breast feathers. They're really curvy, and they just suit this fly well.
I have a question, if I may, with your wings.
Yeah.
I had not seen, and I really like the technique of how you measured the top width of the length of the wings to be the length of the shank. Being lazy, I know I could try this on my own. Will that, and have you done that on smaller dry flies where maybe you need to do both? You know, the wing needs to be the length of the shank, but there's a lot of beauty, and it's for the tire, not the fish, in the way you measured the width to the shank. Would that also work when you're down at 16s, 18s, and
You'd never tie this fly in 16 and 18. You just
no, but
wouldn't.
I'm talking about any dry fly you tie. Can you use that measurement to get a good wing? In other words, the width of the shank for the top of the wing, right? You went like
Yeah, I'm trying to think where that you mean like with let's say CDC. To me, this is
yeah.
going to be, yeah, this is going to be too wide a wing for me for dry fly fishing. Um, it's a beautiful wing, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying it wouldn't work in this day and age, but people stopped using this fly around. I'm gonna say in the 70s for a reason, and uh, and I think the wings might have had a lot to do with it. Uh, they're too wide. Now, there are guys in the Catskills today that fish these flies as moth patterns, which makes a lot of sense, except that you got to be in an area where there's a lot of moths and the fish are taking them.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't quite clear, but to your point, can you use that kind of a measurement with a CDC wing? I'll figure it
Yeah,
out.
you really could. I do a no hackle fly that has a CDC wing, and I like it wide. And yeah, you could use that with that pattern. That's another pattern I'd love to do. It's my own. It's my own no hackle. It's a quill body no hackle done.
Hmm.
And I stole the quill body idea from AK Best, of course. And I don't know where I stole the wing from, but anyway, I came up with my own winging technique for that fly, and that would be a good measurement for that fly. The
I'm going
more
to
I
try
think
it because I
about it,
really like I like the idea of bigger wings too.
yeah. And the reason I have bigger wings on that fly is to float the fly. It's a no hackle. There's no hackle on it. So
Hmm.
I want a broad wing. I've been tying my Catskill style flies that I fish in the east with broader wings. Once, once, once I had success with my no hackle, I started tying my regular um, Catskill flies with broader wings than they typically tied them with, using the same technique I use in my no hackle and winging technique, and they've worked great for me. So yeah, try it. I don't think you could go too far off, too far
Yeah,
wrong.
that's a beautiful tie you did. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Al. I think
Anything else
it's
for Eric? It looks like I'm on deck whether I was ready or not, huh?
I think it's all you, Al.
Okay,
So
good. Well,
go for it.
that's just wonderful. I'll switch the spotlight here, and I want to give you a brief look at what we're going to be playing with today. I'm going to start by apologizing. Uh, Gretchen was had surgery earlier today. The whole
Mhm.
week leading up to the surgery and what's going to be coming for the week after has been crazy. So you don't have a roadmap fly to look at. All I did was show you what the wing is going to look like, and then we're going to go ahead and tie it. And this wing, let's talk about the fly for a minute. The fly that I'm going to tie today is based on a pattern developed by a gentleman by the name of Eric Otzinger uh, from Southern California. And I've seen his fly tied by several people. That would be Michael Paradas. He's on tonight's call, as well as Steve Fernandez. And Steve is any of you who have not seen him construct a fly, um, he constructs flies so that they are artworks. Trust me, tonight's will not be an art will not be one that's an art in any way, shape, or form. And then there's a gentleman who does a really good job of it from Europe. His name is William N. Sidrum. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, and I apologize to you, William. But anyway, he calls the fly the single wing dun. Steve Fernandez claims that Eric Otzinger named it the hackle wing dun. Don't know what it was called. I first learned about this wing at a trade show back in the 90s and gave it a try, not knowing anything about it, where it came from or not. I saw somebody playing with it at a trade show and gave it a try. I think it's a gorgeous wing, but I had a problem with it. And I'm going to talk about the reason the wing is constructed the way you see it right here and how I'm going to present it a little bit later. The way Otzinger, the pictures that I've seen of the Otzinger flies, is the wing tended to be just up a little bit more like that, coming from the center of the hook. And of course, these would be shortened to make that a little bit more of an upright wing. And one of the things that I found in testing this particular pattern on the spring creeks and stuff where I did give it a good test drive after I got back from that trade show, I think it was in California. But anyway, is that I found that this would up like this, that stem in there would twist the leader some. Really bad on sizes 10s and 12s. 14's not so bad. By the time you got to 16 and 18, it didn't make any difference. It did really quite well. But I found that I could modify the wing by slimming down the profile just a little bit. And I want you to notice the angle that the wing is at right now. And I found that tipping the wing back a little bit rather than straight up, but tipping it back a little bit seemed to help with some of that leader twist. And the formula that I use, I want you to notice I'm taking my bodkin and laying it flat on the turned down eye. And I want you to notice the parallel between the bodkin and the stem of the feather. By tilting it back at that angle, it changed the aerodynamics of the bigger flies where they didn't twist the leader so bad. However, honestly, I did not use this wing a lot because I discovered the Wonder Wing about the same time, and it became my go-to wing for my own flies and that type of stuff. But In tying this fly, let's take a look at the recipe. We're going to call it the single wing done or whatever. However, understand what I'm tying today is not the same thing that Eric tied, and I'm going to narrate to what he did. And for a Montana guy trying to crank out flies in speed rather than in how difficult it is to tie, the way Eric put it together was just too darn much work. Quite frankly, I could do it, but it just took too long. But anyway, dry fly hook, whatever size you want. Take the thread. It's going to be the color of choice because you're going to vary the thread based on what you do to the rest of the fly. What is it going to imitate? A PMD, or is it going to be a really small blue-winged olive or something like that? You know, that those would be things that you have to make up. I'm going to use wood duck. Why? I never used wood duck when I was doing it before, but I've got wood duck, and my friend Eric Austin was using wood duck today, so I'm going to as well. But I'll narrate to some of the things you need to look at, no matter what feather you use. I usually used chicken or mallard flank, and mallard flank and wood duck flank about the same thing as far as consistency and the way they handle, as far as tying them, though the color is a little bit different. The body, it's going to be a dubbing, and it's a choice. I'm going to be using gray, but it can be whatever you want the fly to be. The thorax is going to be peacock curl. The hackle will be whatever color you want, and the thread's going to be head. Now let's take a look at the materials. And I am going to use my pointer to point those out rather than trying to allow you to try to figure out what in the heck I'm talking about. And I'm just going to get my pointer up here. We'll start with the hooks, obviously dry fly hooks. Right here next to the dry fly hooks, I've already got some size tackle, and I'll use brown. And why am I using brown? Because that's what I had laying on my desk when I got through tying flies last week for a customer. Gray dubbing, I'll be using dubbing wax, gray thread. Guarantee I'll be using static guard. Been dry and cold here, and static electricity is alive and well. Going to be using whiting tailing packs. Going to be using wood duck for the wing, and my thorax will be peacock. So one of the things, though, that I did want to talk about for just a moment is the static guard. Most of you don't have to deal with it, and that's fine. I'm pleased that you don't, but I do. And one of the things that I don't like is you can take the lid off of it and spray things down, and the spray can kind of stick things together if you're not careful. Well, there's another thing that's really good for static electricity, and it's called the bounce pads that you put in your clothes dryer when you dry clothes to keep static electricity down. Well, that's a bounce pad there on the outside of this can of static guard, held in place with a couple of rubber bands. Well, when I just start to have static electricity show up, I keep this setting in my tying area, and I just go with my hands, and I've taken care of most of the static electricity. Once in a while, I'll have to hose the materials down, but usually I just kind of run my hands over that anti-static pad, and that really helps. But anyhow, let's get to the tying butts and get to tying. But before I get started, any questions before I go any further? Okay, good. Well, then we'll just go right ahead. Let me get this hook out of the vise. Set that aside and get another one in the vise. I'm going to be using size 12, but would be on the bigger side of what I would do for my own tying. Now I need to switch glasses, so let me get these out of the way here and get another pair out. Okay, there we go. Okay, good. And I'm going to be using my gray thread. I'll just reach over and grab that at my tying area. And I'm going to start in about the center of the hook, give or take. And just wrap back a short distance, not very far, and stop. That's because one of the things that Gretchen and I do whenever we tie hackle fiber tails on the hook. We do so over a bare hook shank. It's the only time that we do that is with hackle fiber tails and some other really hard materials like squirrel tail. But for the biggest part, we just do most of it with hackle fiber. Now I'm using some whiting tailing pack feathers, and as you can see, they're pretty spiky looking things. Really nice stuff, but they're very dense. Let me just pull a few out here for my tail. Pull them out to the side, make sure they're lined up. Grab them with my left hand, and now I'll tear the feather away with my right. And I find that they very seldom become misaligned that way. But if I go the other way and hold the feather tight with my right hand and try to pull the fibers loose with my left, I don't always keep them lined up the way I want. Now I'm going to make the tail equal to the length of the complete hook. Set it in place. Bind it down to the shank, just the bare shank. All right. Now what I'm going to do is, let's see, I want to, got to remember just how I'm going to do this. One of the things about switching glasses around, there's another thing that comes along with advancing years, and it's called hearing aids. And Gretchen talked me into getting some hearing aids recently, and I'm still in the process of getting along with those things or learning to get along with them. We're fighting with them with each other for the time being. But anyway, right now I'm going to reach over to the materials area and grab my dubbing wax and my dubbing. And I'll take that back over to the vise. And first off, I'm going to loosen the cap on my wax, but then leave it set there. I found that if I ever leave the cap off just and the wax just sitting there, invariably it ends up in the trash bin. And that just makes an awful mess. Now let me get my dubbing out of the bag, and it's just dubbing, gray dubbing. I'll use the wax here, and I'm taking my lid and I'm setting it up with the open side up, just like that, down on the tabletop. And I'll just go ahead and get some wax on my thread. There we go. Now I'm taking the wax and I'm going straight down into that open cap so I don't forget. I mean, seriously, about 2 weeks ago, I forgot and dropped it in the waste bin, and it just makes a mess. Now I'm going to touch this dubbing to that wax thread. And I want you to notice, you can see that getting just a nice coating of the dubbing there on the thread. I've got an item there I want to get rid of. And I'm just going to twist in a clockwise direction. Okay, and I'll wrap back now towards the end of the shank and just apply a dub body. If I wanted, I could put a rib on it, and I do often. I'm not going to mess with it tonight. I need just a tiny bit more. I won't even wax this. I'll just pull out so much that you won't even, or so little that you won't even be able to see that it's on the thread hardly, because I don't have much that I want to cover. Right about there. I'll stop. Okay. Now we're going to move into the wood duck. And I've got several wood duck feathers here, the flank feathers. I'm just going to pull one out. And I want you to notice that I did tear a lot of the fibers off of the end of the stem, because I don't know whether it's my imagination or not, but it seems that the fuzzy ends of the feathers, wood duck flank, is a lot fuzzier than it is on mallard. Might be just my imagination. But I want to show you a problem and what we're going to do to fix it. Uh, Come here, feather, behave. I want you to notice how that feather curves. And if I put a curved wing made out of that curved stem on this hook, I'm going to end up with a fly that's probably going to twist my leader. Well, let me first start by identifying if there's any flat part of the stem. And in fact, towards the tip, it gets flatter, and towards the base end, you can see it really gets curved. I mean, so I am going to get rid of some of this from right about here. I'll just pull that back out of the way, and let's see if that's going to be a little bit straighter. Yep, that is a little bit straighter. So let me just tear these. Well, I really don't want to waste that wood duck. Wood duck is so hard to get. I'll just pull some more of this back. I'll leave it on there. And if I just leave it like that and trim this part off right here, I can save that, and it'll be nice for wing cases on nymphs and stuff like that. And I won't be losing all of that. So, but the other thing I want to do while I still have this long piece of stem is use it to control the other part of the stem, because I want to straighten that stem that's got that slight curve in it. And whenever you want to add to a curve, you put some crimps on the same side that the curve goes, thumbnail, forefinger. If you want to get rid of a curve, well, you put some crimps on the opposite side. And I'm putting some crimps right there along that stem. And I want you to notice it's starting to straighten out. And I'm going to do it just a little bit more. And that's starting to straighten out a lot more. And the part that I want to have straight is, so let me get rid of this part right here. That'll go in the bin of feathers for reuse. And now what I want to do is take these fibers, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to throw them away. I probably could set them aside too, but I mean, after a while, the set aside stuff is more than you know what to do with. Okay. Now, a disaster happened. I dropped that doggone feather into the waste bin, and you think I can find that little son of a gun? Not a chance. So where am I going? I'm going back over to the materials area, and we'll get another one of those and start over. Only I'm not going to take all the time explaining that I did before. I'm just going to come over here and straighten out the stem and get the waste part that I need. Get rid of the rest. It's starting to straighten out pretty good. Crimp it pretty good all along there. Set those aside. And I want that to go just a little. There we go. Now that's not, I want to straighten it just a little bit more. There, now those crimps are straightening it out really well. May not be holding it real good so you can see, but you can, it's a lot straighter than it was. Now what I'm going to do is tie this on just like that. And I want you to notice that it turned. Oh, darn. Well, there's a way to fix that. It's called needle nose pliers. So let me undo this. And I'm going to crunch the stem right there and flatten it. Now, I'll put those needle nose pliers away. Well, I better keep them here. I may have to flatten it again. One of the problems of flattening it with the needle nose pliers is sometimes I get too aggressive and I'll break the stem. And I don't want. There we go. Good. Now I have to, it's still twisting on me. So there's another little trick that we're going to have to employ. I'm going to try one more time. to get it to set right. And if it doesn't, oh, okay, I will lifting that up on top. It's looking better. Trim this off. Now I want to get one of my hackles. And I've got those right over here. Let me get that package of hooks out of the way. And I'll just take one of these feathers out of this bundle of feathers. I've sized them all to fit a size 12 hook. So that looks like a good one right there. I'll just grab it and put the rest back under my clip so they're ready for the next fly that I'll be doing, which will probably be tomorrow. And I'll go ahead and add the hackle right there.
You need to switch your camera, Al.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am so used to having Gretchen here doing all this stuff for me that this running both ends of the deal is, well, it's not as easy as you might think. Anyway, and now we're back over to the materials just to grab the peacock and back to the VISE camera. I'll get the piece of peacock out here and cut off the waist end. And I want to get that stem sticking up. See how the stem is on the upside? I want it facing forward, so I'll tie it on the hook so it's kind of up, and as you'll see, it'll be facing forward as I wrap forward. Okay, that looks pretty good. Right, now I'm going to wrap my hackle, keeping it reasonably sparse. Now, what I wanted to explain to you that Otzinger did is he did not wrap the hackle around the shank like I just did. What he did is he had a dubbed thorax area, and he would take a ball of that dubbing, pull it up, and then jam it down towards the body around the thread. And anyway, he tied a parachute post with nothing but a clump of dubbing. A really cool technique. And he would wrap a parachute hackle around that parachute post made out of dubbing. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, and I'm not going to mess with it today, trying to show it to you. But just to give you an idea, that's what he did. Is he had a parachute hackle in there. Now, what I'm going to do to finish this fly is pull the feather over. Let's see, that's looking pretty decent. Do just like I would if I was tying a quill wing. Whoops, I let it slip off the doggone hook there. I didn't want to do that. Now I want to make sure that I get that angle right. Okay, and that's just about in the direction that I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off the waist up here. Now that's not waist. In fact, that's a future wing case on a nymph or something like that. So don't be throwing that away. Set that aside. Whoops. Well, I'm going to have a wing that's shorter than it's supposed to be. In fact, I'm going to have a wing that's coming apart on me. You know what? When things go to heck, they go to heck. I'm sorry, folks, but
You got a lot
stuff
on your
happens.
mind,
It just
Al.
happens. So let me
You got a
see if
lot.
I can in any way salvage that. Boy, I don't see how I can salvage that. But let me try it anyway, just for the heck of it, and see what happens here. No way that I'm going to salvage that I can see. So I'm going to cut that off. Do something I've never done before. I'm going to throw a half hitch on that guy right there. I am going to see if it's possible to fake another wing into there with a couple of turns of thread. Now, don't laugh, guys. This could be just an absolute train wreck. And that's not, well, that's not what I had planned, but stuff happens.
I promise I won't tell Stephen Fernandez.
And Stephen by now would have his gun out shooting at me. I mean, I know exactly what would be going on here. And
Michael might tell on you. I don't know. You got to watch Mr. Paradas.
I don't know.
No, I won't do that.
Mike Paradas is on here too. The Southern California crowd is getting ready. Good thing I'm a long ways away from there. They'll be all cooled off and not be nearly so ticked off at me by the time they get from Southern California to Idaho here. Just chuckle away, guys. I know nothing ever goes wrong when you're tying on camera in front of the whole darn world, live on Facebook too. Jesus, what did I do that for? Anyway. All right, let's get this pulled over and see if we can salvage that. There we go. Well, we'll give it okay, I do need to pull that forward just a little bit. There we go. Trim off the waist. Going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this fly off and I'm going to promptly throw that away so nobody can ever see that. Anyway, so there's a single wing done and an embarrassed Al Beatty because the dang thing got away from me.
Hey, good save, Al.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Recovery. Yeah, learn more from their mistakes than you ever will from your successes.
Fish
Hey,
don't
yeah.
have a difference.
Al. Way to improvise.
Anyway,
Well
I'm
done.
so embarrassed. I've got to get my friend Eric in here too. But I guess I should answer questions before we go any further. And I'm very pleased that Mike Paradas is on tonight so that he might be able to answer some questions in that regard. And Mike, if it's all right with you, I would really like to spotlight you so that we can be side by side here, if that works for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Mike, let's see. Add spotlight. Let's see. Oh, you're got your picture turned off, and I can't add you on spotlight unless you're on the camera.
There we go.
Now we can do it. Let's see. Let me get up here and add spotlight. Okay, there we are, side by side. Now, the real master at this is Stephen Fernandez. He's not on here tonight. It is probably good for me that he's not. But Mike Paradas is the one that can tell you some about it, and maybe you can give us more information on Eric's fly.
Well,
You seem to have a book there on it.
I've got a book here that the Feather Mechanic 2 by Gordon Vanderspoel, I guess is how you pronounce his name. He's South African, and the last go around in the book is Stephen Fernandez's recipe or his tying instructions for this fly, and it's also got an excellent write-up on the history of Eric, and it is not an easy fly to tie by any stretch of the imagination. If anybody's got questions, I will attempt to answer them, but it is really a pretty fly, and Stephen does just a remarkable job. It only takes about well, if he's tying fast, maybe 45 minutes to tie the fly, and it's just beautiful. And to watch him work is that too is. But if anybody's got any questions,
yeah, Al, and Michael, this is Jay from the Netherlands.
Yes.
When Gordon was writing this book together with several tyers,
yes,
I tried this fly also, and I suggested that maybe the stem, which the original way is facing backwards to the hook bend, I tried to tie the stem facing forward. So let's say the stem facing to the hook eye, and the feather bending, looking backwards, more like let's say a sailboat. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm trying to visualize that, and
yeah. And the reason was because if you do it the way it is done in the book, the tie-off point, you'll be adding bulk. If you turn it up backwards, the bulk will be on the backside, let's say on the body part, which you can wrap it with dubbing or whatever, or any other body material. So you'll have less bulk near the hook eye rather than bulk at the backside.
I thought, Michael, we saw Stephen do it with the rake is going forward toward the hook eye. And then he pulls everything down over that. Then the really hard part, like Michael was saying, is the dubbing ball, Al, and bringing that down and getting a parachute around the dubbing ball is very difficult. And the other thing that was interesting that Michael told us, that Stephen told us, is that Eric Otzinger really believed in sparse hackle, and that made a big difference. So he didn't heavily hackle his flies, apparently.
The fly that I saw, Stephen Fernandez tie, if I recall right, there was 2 turns of hackle on that parachute hackle.
Yeah, probably right. Michael?
Yeah, I've got a little short video of just the dubbing ball and the hackle that I'll send to you, and you can play with that, Al.
Okay, we'll do.
Let me see if I got a picture of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to visualize, Jay, how that work.
Yeah.
While they're doing that, what is the reasoning behind you and Gretchen always putting tails, and I think you do it with wire too, directly on bare hook rather than laying a thread base?
Okay, I can explain that. Okay, I can show you better than anything. But one of the things that we've found is if you put the hackle fiber tail over a thread base, that thread base has a small, very small, but it has some dimension, making the thread base a little bit bigger around than the hook itself. And what often happens is that, especially on that slippery, hard tailing material out of the hackle fibers, is that that last turn of thread and dubbing at the back of the fly, even though you think it's nice and tight, if you drive down a bumpy road or you're hiking down a trail, the bouncing of your flies in the fly box will have some of those last turns slipping, and you'll have a nice straight tail or a tail that used to be nice and straight. It will be tipped downhill. And this is one way that we have found to counteract that is that if there's no base under it to slip off of, it don't make any difference.
Interesting. Thank you. Because I've always laid a thread base with the opposite thought in mind that materials put on a bare hook tend to slip.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you on everything except really hard, dense fibers like the whiting tailing pack. The whiting tailing pack, there's a bunch of hackle fibers that you don't need to worry about it. There's a lot of the stuff that are used on dry fly tails today that the fibers are really pretty, they're not near as dense as the whiting tailing packs or some of the spade feathers we used to get on the capes back in the old days. But anyway, I think Jay and
Al, I've got a quick question about this. I've had a problem over the years with wet flies that have no tail with and floss bodies. Now, if I put that floss right on the bare hook, would it not slip off the end then? Because that would be great.
If it's good and tight, and if it's good and tight, it shouldn't. But again, I'd have to watch you put it on to be sure that it's tight enough. But yeah, it is not going to slip off. It's not. What is it going to slip off of?
Yeah, I mean, all I can tell you is I've used various and sundry weird schemes to prevent it slipping off the back. Floss is at least on the thread that I've always put it on, the thread base that I've always put it on, slips off the back right now with no tail on the fly. And there's quite a few old patterns like that, that just have a floss body. That's all they have.
Sure.
And some hackle and maybe a wing or something, but
no tail. That's real common. Some of the soft hackle flies out, all they got is just a few turns of floss for a body.
Yeah. And I've had a problem with it slipping off the back,
Okay, now we're back to Michael and Steve. They both look like they got something to say.
Al, if you could allow me to share a screen, but
okay, I can do that. Just
I cannot.
Okay, let's see. Make co-host. Okay, you're now a co-host. Go ahead and share your screen. By the way, this screen share for all of you watching in is coming from Holland, the Netherlands. So, Jay, thank you for staying up half the night to join us.
No, it's 11 p.m. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm going to have to try your hump, Jay.
Pardon?
Yeah, I'm going to have to try tying your humpy.
Oh, yeah. So here is a picture of a mayfly with the let's say the stem part facing forward and the feather facing backwards. That's what I thought trying to replicate. And let's see if I can show you another one. Let me see. Share screen. So this is what I came up with.
How interesting.
So.
That is interesting.
On some really long fibered stuff, you could almost form the tail out of some of the waste from the wing.
Yeah, so basically, the idea was firstly, of course, to imitate the looks of the wings on a real mayfly, but also to get the bulk not in front of near the hook eye, but getting it behind so you can wrap it up with dubbing for the body or whatever. So that was the idea. And I think I got another picture of the fly, which was not exact. Oh, let me see.
I'm going to bounce that off Steven and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
Well, this was just an idea, just to I just finished it with some CDC and some dubbing as thorax material, I think. But the idea was indeed to get the bulk of the tie-in point of the feather
I get
behind the wings.
Right. That's a gorgeous fly. Have you noticed any difference in the stiffness of the wing causing your leader to twist?
Uh, I haven't fished it, so it was just pure
Oh,
experimental tie.
sure,
So that
sure.
was, that's what we fly tyers often do, just try something different.
Oh, sure. Absolutely a gorgeous concept. God, that's beautiful.
That
Yeah,
makes
I've
anybody,
got one.
has
Have
anybody
you guys
actually,
ever tied a dual wing versus the single wing?
You're going to have to say that again, Michael. David. I did not.
Has anyone ever tied a dual wing versus this single wing?
You mean a double wing doing the
Well,
same thing, but at two feathers?
Yes.
Yeah. I tried it a couple of times, and once or twice it turned out. Uh, but again, it was at the time I was experimenting with them back in the 90s. I I just ended up liking the Wonder Wing a heck of a lot better than I did the
a,
single wing or the
a,
double
a
wing.
Wally wing is a Wally wing is a dual wing version of
Right.
just what Jay has described there.
Mhm.
With
When I first saw that, I thought isn't that a Wally wing? Wally Lutz?
Not really, because the Wally wing is not, the stem is taken out of the equation in the Wally wing, and the little stripping fibery type of thing that hooks the barbs to the shaft is what makes the one side of the Wally wing. The stem is thrown away.
No, it's split
Mhm.
on the
Well, it
Wally
is
wing.
split, but if you recall, you strip the fibers down one side, you strip the fibers down the other side. They make the wings, and then the stem itself is cut and thrown away.
Right. The center one is. Yeah.
I have a question on that wing. Has
Yeah.
anybody fished it much? Because it just seems it's a beautiful fly, but it just seems the durability. Once a couple fish bite down on it, I'm just
I fished it. I've fished the one Al was doing. Not the exact one, obviously more upright, but and it fished fine. My fear was that it was going to tip over on its side, which it did not do. Though, and I don't remember what kind of success I had, or if I had success. I just don't. One of the guys that I fished with in Montana had some, and I fished it one day.
But
Okay, well,
even
anything more from Michael and from Jay? Okay, Jay, thank you for
So
joining us. I'll remove your
one
spotlight,
little,
Michael.
I'll show
Oh,
you
I'm
one
sorry.
little thing. This is the original version. Let's say the stem facing backwards
Correct.
and the barbs facing forwards. And as you can see, the bulk created by the tying down the barbs, you get a little bulky area near the hook eye.
Yep.
See that?
Yep.
Al, in the other way that he did it, where it was reversed, if you're going to tie your hackle on as a collar rather than a parachute, that allows for more hackle to be behind the wing and less in front, and the wing will stand out better. In other words, you can do 3 wraps in back, 2 in front, and that's it. And you haven't created a cluster around the front of the wing.
Sure. Good point. Okay. Anything else from you, Jay, before I?
No, that was it. Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Al.
Okay. And from you, Michael?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's back to you and me, Eric.
Okay.
And before we close up for the night, we want to make sure that there aren't any more questions. Or I really enjoyed the discussion. Al screwed up and actually generated some really good dialogue, all of which I think we learned something from. So,
Well, Al, you've got a lot. You're dealing with a lot right now. The fact that you could tie a fly at all is a miracle.
I can use that as an excuse, but I've been at this a lot of years, and I've had good days and bad days. It just, hey, it just was a bad day, and I lost it, and you guys got to see it live on Facebook, folks, live on Facebook. Anyway,
perfect. There'd be no discussion.
I have one more question for Eric on tying that fly. What's the rule of thumb as far as the hackle? I know, like in the Catskills, it's 1.5 to gape, but it looks like you were almost going twice.
Oh, it's not in the Catskills. It's not 1.5. No, in the Catskills, it's at least 2.
And well, it looks like you were going more on that. It seemed on that fly.
Yeah, that was just an attempt because I got big high wings on it.
Okay.
I don't like to have
off the proportions. Yeah.
I don't like to have big high wings and then the hackle be half as high. You know, that hackle, the hook was a 12 and the hackle was a 10. And I had both 12s and 10s ready to go, and the 12 I could tell was just going to look short. I mean, that's what it was.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on East Meets West at the VISE. For now, it's a wrap until next week. Thanks for joining us.